Hi everyone! My name is Rachel and you are watching Adulting 101 with the Houston Public Library. Today I'm going to teach y'all how to sew on a button. This is a basic mending skill that everyone should have to keep their clothes lasting longer and looking nicer. All you need to do this is a button, a needle, thread, and scissors. If you don't already own these supplies, many grocery stores, pharmacies, and bargain stores like Dollar Tree sell portable sewing kits that come with needles, a few colors of thread, and other starting sewing supplies. Sometimes they even come with buttons in them. If you want a button that matches your clothes, check out the inside seam of your garment over here. Sometimes clothing companies will put an extra button in there specifically for replacement. Otherwise, a craft store like Michael's or Joann's is probably your best bet. The most important thing is making sure that your button is the right size for your buttonhole. Today, I am sewing a button on an old coat. This button got really loose over time because I wore the heck out of this jacket. Rather than just tossing the jacket in the donation bin, I'm going to sew this button back on to keep wearing it as long as I can. This saves money and keeps things out of landfills until they have absolutely no use anymore, so it is good for the environment as well. To start, cut a length of thread from your spool. You need maybe more than you think you would for this, about 2 feet worth of thread. And remember, it's always better to have a little extra thread than to not have enough. Next, you will want to thread your needle. Sometimes it helps to pinch the end of the thread between your fingers or to bite it a little to make the thread flat and easier to put through the eye of the needle. So I'm going to bite it real fast. Once you have the end of your thread through the needle, you're going to pull the thread so that it's evenly spaced on either side of the needle. And it almost looks like you have 2 strands of thread on here. Next, you'll want to tie a knot at the end of your thread. I'm going to show you a trick I learned to do this from my home economics teacher in 7th grade. You'll wrap the loose end of the threads around your finger once, and then you're going to roll them back and forth between your forefinger and thumb to create a knot. Then once you've done that a few times, remove your finger, pull tight, and you'll have a little knot at the end of your thread. I actually want a bit of a bigger knot, so I'm going to do that twice, which you can totally do. There we go. That's a little crazy looking, but it will work for me. Now, there are 2 very important things to keep in mind when you are sewing on a button. One, you want the button to line up with the buttonhole. That is pretty easy for me to tell because, as I said, this is an older coat. There's a few little bits of string right here from the last button. So I know that it needs to go about here. And the second thing you want to keep in mind is that you want to have the right amount of tension on your button. If it's too loose, your garment will gape open and you're more likely to lose your button again. But if it's too tight, it'll be really difficult to button and unbutton your clothes. You want to have just enough room under the button for your fabric to lay flat and smooth. Now, I'm going to start from the inside of the jacket, push the needle through up one of these tiny little holes in the middle of the button. And then, pretty simple, I'll just bring it back down in this top button right across here. Sometimes you'll sew parallel through the 4 holes in the middle of the button. Sometimes you'll sew in an X. Just follow what the other buttons in the garment look like. I'm going to sew through these holes a couple times, and then I'm going to stop and check my tension to see if it's too tight or too loose. It is a little tight, so I'm just going to gently give this a tug while the thread is still loose on the needle to ease it up a bit. That feels better. That'll sit more nicely under the garment. So I'm going to finish sewing up this side of the button a few more times. And now that I've got that side done, I'm just going to do the same exact thing to this side of the button over on the left. And now we are going to fasten off the back of the thread on this button to make sure this is secure. I like to do this by sewing through my stitches in the back a couple times in all different ways to create a bunch of tiny different knots that would be very difficult to untie or come loose. And once I have sewn through these threads a few times, I'll give my button a tug to make sure it seems nice and secure. Alright, so we are about out of thread. The button feels nice and secure on there. It's not too tight. I can still wiggle it around on the threads a little bit, but it is not coming off. So I am going to snip off the extra bit of this thread to get my needle back. And voila! You now know how to sew a button. I hope that this tip was useful and that you learned a new adulting skill. Make sure to follow the Houston Public Library on social media to check out all of our other adulting, craft, STEM, and miscellaneous videos. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.